Well, Older Gods being our debut film, there was the right time to do it because Wagyu Films, which makes up of myself, Sean Bishop, Keith Lupton, Scott Bishop, for years we've been making commercials. We've had a production company now for about 15 years. So after working on all that stuff, we realized that that wasn't the reason we got into this. We got into it to make films. So when we got started, we started developing a couple of scripts, and after we got funding and got the green light on quite a big film called Patriarch, then apparently there was a worldwide pandemic of some sort, so that kind of delayed things. So what we had to do was then make sure that, right, we're not waiting anymore, this is our time, we need to make something. So we tried to think, what can we do? So we started coming up with the concept of Older Gods, which is more of a small crew in a small location with a small amount of cast, but still keeping it high quality and exciting, and I think that's what we've done. So we're really excited about the concept of people seeing the film, because from something that was just a small idea, started writing in a bedroom, to actually seeing it on set and actually seeing the results of it is pretty amazing and exciting. And now's our time, so we can't wait to see what happens. So writing duties to Older Gods, that came down to me. So where the story kind of came from was a bunch of different things. Obviously, there's like three different parts to it. First of all, we kind of had to find something that we can make. So obviously we had bits of funding, but a lot of it's done by ourselves, because Wagyu Films, through our commercial work, has built up and made sure that we've got all the camera gear, we've got all the department heads, so we've got the post-production and everything. So what can we do with what we've got, but making it high quality, so we're not stretching ourselves too thin. So that came into the writing. So every time I was writing something, I kept introducing another character. It was like, no, maybe not, and kind of meld that into a couple of people into one character or something. So there was definitely an aspect of the production of it. Second aspect was I had been reading a lot of cosmic horror at the time, which is all very much this, what we call the primordial fear, which is that sense of we're all so small and insignificant, how could we possibly mean anything to anything in existence? And if you really think of that thought, it could be quite depressing. So, and you'd assume there'd be certain people that would make you go down a spiral of madness quite quickly. So I thought that was an interesting thing, of somebody needed to be in a situation where that was an issue. And the last part really was, I lost a friend during lockdown where they actually got sick, and we were told that I had to talk to him. We were told that he had 24 hours left, basically, before he passed away, and I was told that I couldn't come see him. So then I had to instead. They were going to organise a video meeting tomorrow, and what happened was he passed away before I had a chance to talk to him. So that made me feel guilty, even though it wasn't my fault. So I think a lot of that bled into Older Gods, because the story of Older Gods came from a character who's lost his friend, who, was a bit different to mine in terms of who's got lost himself in a cult and things like that. But it's all the things you wish you said, it's all the things you'd wish you'd done to protect them, and that is a huge part of what Older Gods is about. It's strange when you're writing a script, because especially when kind of knew going in that I'd direct it, which is different when I suppose if I was just writing a script that somebody else might use. So a lot came into the production of it. So I was more excited about having a beginning, middle, and end and making it work. That was my biggest challenge. But I suppose I was really looking forward to the ending, because I suppose in any films, there's a couple of scenes toward the end of, like, there's an emotional scene between two friends. There's a big confrontation between the villain and the main guy. I was making sure that those two scenes worked best, because if those two scenes didn't, the film might not work. But I think because gone through so much up to that point that those two scenes are really the kind of emotional. It's what you've worked up to. It's got to mean everything. So if people are emotionally invested in the film, which I definitely think they will be, those two scenes will be one's very scary and thrilling and kind of strange, and then it builds to quite emotional. So I was really looking forward to seeing them. And I think that's paid off really well, because seeing the performances and how we produced it, those two parts are my favourite part of the film, I'd say. So the most worrying part of the filming process was because of COVID and because of the budget and things like that, we had to keep it to a very small crew, and those crew had 1 million jobs to do between each other. So, but that included me as well. So there was nobody on set to really tell us, right, we're up to this bit, and then, oh yeah, remember when you filmed this scene, and then you move on to that scene. That was all kind of down to me, because the producers had to do this, everybody had to do this. I had to make sure that the film was being edited in my head as we were going. So the most hardest bit was when everybody turns to you and says, have we got everything? That your brain's got to go, yeah. So it's kind of, that was the most challenging bit, was just for me personally, was just kind of do that without having a breakdown and going, I don't know where I'm up to, leave me alone. You've got to make sure that everybody, especially part of directing, you're just answering 1 million questions. So Sean, the cinematographer, say, how do you want this? And then Andy, the makeup artist, will come over saying, where we do this. Scott will say, by the way, you've only got 10 minutes left to film this. So you've got to make sure that you can multitask, and that's that. And I think we did that. Did it pretty well, because at the end of the day, the film makes sense, which is what the biggest worry was. But I'm really proud. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I'm really proud of what we did. So there was a load to do, especially because we'd given ourselves a short deadline from basically saying, no, we're not waiting, we're not letting COVID stop us from getting to our dream of started producing films. So we had to make sure that this script was obviously somebody kind of falling into madness in like one location in a cottage in the middle of nowhere. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to find a cottage in the middle of nowhere that you can have for a week, but we also needed somewhere to stay. But the more remote you are, the less hotels are nearby. So we had to find a remote cottage that could house a reasonable sized crew for a couple of weeks. So that was tricky. So we had to go through all the different location managers, and we even tried Airbnb just to find the right places until we found this really perfect place in the middle of nowhere, up in Snowdonia somewhere in Wales, which was perfect for it. So, and then after that, we realized that, oh God, we've got the location, we've got the script. What do we need to bring with us? And realize half of the story is around Chris, the main character, looking through all this evidence that Billy, his friend, has left for him. And that includes sketches, CSI photos, or forensic photos, whatever you call it. So our production designer, Keith Lupton, had to be in charge of getting all that together. So alongside with Andrew Sexton, our art director. So Andy did a lot of the sketches that you see on screen of monsters and lots of scribbles and crazy people's writings. Andy had to sort out all that beforehand, while Keith was producing the forensic images, making all anything you see with scars and things like that. That's Andy as well. So Andy had to juggle things like sketching and some incredible makeup. That if you ever see any of the cuts and things in the shape of this kind of circle within a circle, which is Cult's all about, that's all Andy Sexton as well. And we had to have all this designed, photographed, printed, not just printed, but in the right print. We had to make our own newspapers. So Keith and the team were making sure that you see him going through newspapers from all the different around the world. So we had to buy newspaper that you could print onto. Everybody had to write articles that were in Croatian, Russian, or Serbian, Russian, Spanish, and make sure we get them translated, because even though you see him on screen for a second, you're going to get that guy who's still going to pause it and go, you've got the Spanish wrong there. So we had to get things like that right, which is weird and too much detail, but somebody did it here. So there's a lot of effort that went into. It wasn't just about turning up with cameras. We had to get the place looking right. And also we had to cast the thing, so it's all based around one performance, really. There's a couple of other people. And we've worked with Rory Wilson before when we did a short film called Afterlife. He was amazing in that. So there was already a bit of a shorthand with Rory. So when we got together, I prepped him. I kind of said, this is a big responsibility. Can you do all this by yourself? There's a lot of dialogue of just you on phones and things like that. So it's all we can't cut away from you. And Rory nailed it. His performance is one of the things that's really pushed this film to another level. And I'm sure he's going to become a big star after this, I think. The most exciting thing of going into the shoot was just can't believe we're doing it. I was writing something that obviously after I've written it, we did sit together and go through and refine it and everything like that, but it was something that just kind of came up with. So one day, to the fact of when you start seeing, because this cottage has a big long drive, so when you start seeing Gerald Buckfield, our sound recordist, turning up in his car, then everybody from Wagyu Films turning up, and then Rory the actor turning up, and Andy, and then all these different people turning up, that was exciting. So it was very strange because we filmed in the hottest week of the year, I think, because we were thinking that ideally it would be perfect if it was all moody, but instead it looks like a strange paradise that people get lost in. So it was just really exciting to see it come into reality, really, because everybody's working on their screenplay. Everybody's got an idea, but I always think if anybody's watching this, then you've finished the screenplay. You should really fucking pat yourself on the back, because it's really hard to do. Everybody's got an idea, or they can write a short film. We're making a coherent 90-minute film from beginning, middle, and end, and then finding a team to actually produce it, then making sure that thing actually freaking makes sense and is good, and when you're watching things, you're like, fucking hell, this is really good! It's kind of a small miracle in a way, because everybody says the film you can't do things without studios. We're in the UK, which is not a third world country, but it's not Hollywood, so we can't. But we've done it, and then for the rest of our lives, we can always say that we did it. Well, a lot of people can't. So that's what I'm really proud of. Going into the film, I need to make sure that everybody was on the same page, because even though we had to keep because people keep saying, "Oh, was it a budget thing that you kept the crew small?" But it was COVID, so we had to, and B, it was in this cottage, so nobody else had anywhere else to live, and there was no phone signal there. So if you did stay outside of it, and there was a problem, it just wasn't an option, so we all had to film it. So after a few of us did a location scout of this cottage, it kind of worked out perfect, but you could only get something like 10 people in it, and that was it. I slept on a couch for all of the shoot, I think, on the floor for a couple of times. But it's making sure that the thing I was most needed to happen was that everybody was on the same page, so everybody knew where we were up to. There's a really difficult thing because there was no internet signal. So usually when you go on a film shoot now, you download from your phone or from your computer the week's schedule, the list of props. We couldn't do any of that. We had to go back to before internet. We're probably watching some old producers wondering what's the problem, but we had to print off everything out. If we forgot to print something, it wasn't happening, or that schedule wasn't that. So by preparing, making sure that everybody had the script, everybody had the schedule, everybody was on the same page, everybody knew what we were doing next. When we went to film a scene, we discussed the scene with the whole team first before we started lighting everything. I'd like to actually write, stop, this is what the scene's about, this is why we're doing it, this is the area of the film we're doing, because obviously we can't film in sequence either. We've got to make sure that we can, if we've done the front room in a way where, if you think about, there's a bunch of scenes where there's a load of this type stuff on the wall, we can't film any scenes before that, or vice versa. So every little shoot had to be done, and we only did it in a couple of weeks. So we had to do it quick, fast, couldn't mess about. The good thing is me and the rest of the guys at Wagyu Films, we communicate in grunts and clicks and nods, and because we've known each other for so long, but sometimes you forget that there's other people coming in who isn't part of Wagyu. So make sure that when we talk to actors, did actually communicate what the scene's about, what the performance is about, rather than just going, have you got it? Like we do together most of the time. Favourite scene to shoot, I'd say the emotional scene at the end between Chris and Billy, where Rory and Ian Coombs, who came in and did a brilliant job as Billy too. It was the first scene. We had one other scene earlier where Chris talks to the policeman. It's not exactly the most emotional scene in the world. It's just a bit mysterious and things like that. But I think you could tell Rory was really up for it, because it was his kind of first scene with another actor, because it's literally with him and a bunch of crew staring at him, telling him to do stuff better. So seeing them together, I had all these ideas for making that really creative, that scene, and having a couple of weird angles and things like that. But as soon as you look at the footage and we got into it, it didn't need anything more than the two guys and the performance they did. So it's just over one shot, over one shoulder and over the other shoulder. That's all in their eyes, and they really don't. And because poor old Chris, played by Rory, had been through the shit, and he's really been through the ringer. We've got a really couple of interesting images where you got how he first shows up, and then he just in his nice suit and tie, and how 80 minutes left he's just half naked, covered in crap, and so he can't say he hasn't got a character journey. But because he's been through so much, he then has this scene which is kind of like his world off his shoulders, is actually telling him that everything's okay. Don't worry about it. This guilt you're holding is actually not. It's more of you than something I blame you for, and that was really cool to watch. I didn't really have to give him much direction. We went outside and did a quick chat, and we obviously had a bit of rehearsal, but it was like over Zoom because of COVID. So we only did that a couple of times, but it was kind of thing. Yain and Rory just got it straight away, so there was no more. No, you need to do it like this. So pretty much how they did it in rehearsal was pretty much how they did it on the day. So it was weird because it was the only scene I could sit back and just watch, because everything else was like, there's all these million things going on. Like Sean's doing amazing cinematography. Because of the small crew, he hasn't got a focus puller. So somebody's trying to keep an eye on just the focus for him and things like that as well. But literally on that one was just sit back and watch two really good performances. So my second film is just going to be dialogue heavy, two guys in a room, I think. Make editing a lot easier. So the cottage that we filmed at it was great. And when you do a location scout, and this was maybe because it's our debut films, when I think it was me, Keith and Sean did a location scout at it. And when we turned up, it was perfect. You look around, the location's great. We maybe should have had a location manager with us who could tell us if certain things are suitable, because once we were there, we realised that it technically didn't have drinking water. You could drink it, but it was very brown out of the taps. To the point that was our drinking water, and if you had a shower, you were having a shower in brown copper. I don't know if it was copper. I don't know what made it brown. But so then you have to go get bottled water, and there's quite a drive to the next town. But then we found out how were we supposed to know that we were going to be filming in the hottest week of the year? And the town ran out of water bottles, so we had to keep driving around until somebody had to go. I think they found some in an MOT garage or something like that, where somebody's fixing cars and a little vending machine. And we spent like £100 on 10 bottles of water or something. And there's no Wi-Fi there, so nobody can check any emails or anything like that, which was kind of really great because it kind of took us into the filming a bit more. But because we were like, once we were in it, we couldn't be distracted. But if we didn't have that file that we needed for scheduling, because we realized we spend all this money on scheduling software and budgeting software and all that, you couldn't use that without internet, so we had to have everything printed off. And there's even one bit where when we turned at the location scout, the cottage was surrounded by beautiful long hay, and it just looked like, brilliant from films like beginning, like Gladiator and Signs. They all have this beautiful corn. we turn up, and on our second day was the day they decided to cut it all down. So, which takes all day, obviously, with a couple of huge tractors. So, I can't remember, did we film anything that day? I remember we definitely filmed something, but I think we just couldn't worry about... It was like, what scenes could we do that don't require sound? Because you have these bloody tractors outside. So, lesson learned. And if you find in a location in the future, see if you've got drinking water, internet, and quiet. That'll probably be 3 things that you should tick off before you get started. I'm proud of coming from Wales, so any opportunity I had to film there, I was really up for. So any time that somebody's talking about the countryside and or any kind of imagery like that, Wales is absolutely perfect. I always say that, especially if there's Americans looking, I say Wales is it's Europe's version of New Zealand. So if you think of any, it's like mountainous and very the opposite of what America looks like and things. But there's scenery that you don't get in even England and Scotland. So, well, Scotland is, I'd say, but not much in England. So, and having any opportunity, and trying to encourage people to film in Wales, that it's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. So, I'm a little bit biased with that, but shut up. So we needed some woodland to do it. So the problem with filming the woodland part in Wales was the fact of it's actually wilderness, and it's a lot of it's kind of protected, the national park. So we had to find locations where we can actually start fires and stuff like that. Which, if anybody's watching this, and they just started a fire. We didn't. We have to find somewhere safe. You have to find somewhere to do it. So we filmed in Staffordshire with. Really great piece of land owned by Martin Meredith, who had it really helped us, and so that's where we were able to film the ritual scene. It's all night in the fire, which the film opened up with, and there's kind of flashbacks later on. We also filmed the bits where Rory wakes up after being captured, and there's a lot in that wood actually, in terms of the tree, where the birds are falling. So those are different experiences as well, because we had. The beauty of producing films ourselves was we could do it in 2 separate filming blocks. So we had one block at the cottage. We were able to come back, look through all the footage, see what was missing and things like that. And then we could have a couple of weeks in this woods as well, where we were able to film everything when the weather wasn't so ridiculously hot. The weather, everything was what we needed. And we had a location manager there who was able to make sure that, we weren't... We needed to concentrate on this, so we couldn't just pick a nice, beautiful piece of land. So somebody that we had security, we were able to do things safely, and we were close to any amenities that we need. So even though I'm saying how amazing Wales is, there was a good shoot in England as well, in some good countryside as well. So if you can film in England too. I was really proud of the team and how we got this done, because there wasn't many. Everybody had a million jobs. Where you'll probably see in this making of documentary that people keep turning up in different areas. So you might see that the production designer also did the sound design and but in terms of the shoot itself, film is a team sport. You can't do things by yourself. You need other people to do it. So you need people to concentrate on certain things. So there wasn't any complaining. There wasn't any dicks. There was no people that were just there to. There was no. That's not my job. That's the only way we got it done, by just having a bunch of guys who were just dedicated to this. And the beauty of it was everybody's first film. So everybody had done bits of TV or a lot of short films or commercials and things like that. But every single department, we chose sometimes just people by their attitude. So there was other people coming that could do it. They've done a bunch of films, and we can afford to do them. It wasn't that type of low budget thing. It was just the fact that would have just been another job to them. Our guys, this was their main thing. They were going to take it serious, and this was going to be their calling card to the world for what they can do. So I'm ridiculously proud of the team that did it. And the results of what they all did, I'm glad to say, is in the film. And this is best film you're going to see in ages because of that small crew. So we cast Rory Wilson in the role of Chris after working together on a short film called Afterlife, where Rory was the lead of that. And it was kind of very similar because it was a film where it was a bit different in terms of story, but it was kind of a film based around just his character and a mystery of finding out what's happened as it goes, rather than loads of dialogue and people. So kind of knew Rory could do it, so it was more convincing him to do it. And once he saw that it was something with a great character and a great character arc that he could do, he was all up for it. And we had a lot of discussions before, because I'm not a big fan of standing on set discussing motivations and stuff like that while all the crew is staring at us wondering what we're doing. So it's going through all that and making sure we have enough time of that beforehand. So there's lots of chat with Rory, and Rory just got it straight away. And he didn't have long to get into the character. He didn't have long to learn the script. But it was strange seeing how the encyclopedic knowledge he had of that script. He knew every word. I would be asking Rory, even though I'd written the bloody thing, I'd be asking Rory, what's the next line? Because I can't remember anything. So that's, even apart from the fact that his performance was amazing, it was just I'm very impressed by that, where somebody could just remember a whole bloody script by himself. So casting him was very easy. He's very nice to work with, a good guy. But I think he's going to get some real notice with this film because he carries this film on his shoulders as well. He did have, not sure if I think he understood the pressure of being the main, because if it didn't work, if his performance with this film would not work, we can have all the best cinematography in the world, the best sound, the best visual effects. But if the character of Chris was just shit, this film would be shit. So the fact that his performance was so amazing has really elevated this film into a different kind of league. So what we did on a small budget is what other people would take millions of pounds to do. And Rory's performance gives it that lift by itself. So being able to do the hard work of this crew, showing the amazing work they can do with a performance like that, this film's fucking amazing. Yan's performance was really great, and it kind of grew as we went forward, because he first turned up, he was first supposed to come and do 1 days of filming with us to do the kind of the flashback scenes where you can see him, and this kind of emotional scene with Rory. And he was also supposed to do a voiceover instead of actually being on screen. So we changed it from listening to an audio to actually seeing Yan on screen, because he was a really good screen presence as well. So, and again, he had very long monologues that he just nailed. He had a real, he really wanted to do it, he was really passionate about it, and you keep thinking, because it's a co-star of the film, but the film kind of relies on him as well, where if this character of Billy, which is the whole motivation of Chris, because the whole reason he's abandoned his friends, his family, to come and see what the hell happened to Billy, because he was his childhood friend, and he's all guilty about if he was there, he maybe would have been able to save Billy, who it looks at first that he obviously killed himself. So the character of Billy was incredibly important. But Yan came in and absolutely nailed it. So it was a great performance. Really helped out when he came along, and he was really cool in terms of like months later when we were kind of like, if we filmed made it a video messages and things like that, so we had to learn really long monologue. That whole speech, which he could previously just read on a voiceover, it's actually very long, and there's a couple of them. If you notice, there's 2 scenes where he's listening to Billy, so that wasn't easy to do, and Yan did a really great job. The hardest scene to do for me personally, I'd say, it's a scene where Rory comes out into the dark. And he finds a torch, because the watch is daring him to come outside, so to speak, because we actually filmed it once and it just didn't work. It could have been a sense of we were filming it at 3 a.m, everybody was exhausted because we filmed all day, and what we filmed wasn't good, but so we had a good opportunity to film a few weeks later with Rory again, and with a better sequence, because it was my writing really rather than anything we filmed. The sequence needed to be longer because he just came outside, killed somebody, and then oh my god, he was done. So we needed more of a build-up for it. So I was really happy with the rewrite we did, and we turned up, but it was all supposed to be lit by a torch by itself, pretty much. But a real worry was what was used in anamorphic lenses. When you stick a torch in an anamorphic, the whole screen just glares up. So every kind of angle we were trying to do, every shot I had in mind, the screen was just glared up. So there was a lot of thinking on our feet with Sean. The cinematography really made that scene work, and because it was literally just lit by that torch, and I wanted it to feel like it was in a vacuum. So we had to strategically make sure he's lit with the torch, but the torch isn't on screen all the time. It's kind of on the edge, so you get a bit of bleed of light, but it's not blowing out the screen from the shots that I wanted. And then the more we kind of go into the wide shots and things like that, it really feels, I wanted a strange dreamlike sense of when you're walking into a vacuum. That was the only scene where I wasn't confident until we got back into the editing room. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like every other scene, I was like, fucking hell, we nailed that. It might just be a case of, I think Sean Moore, I wasn't looking through a monitor the whole time and things like that. I was trying to help with blocking and things like that. So when we got back and you're like, actually that might be one of the best fucking scenes in the film, I'm like, I was really happy with that, because that was the most challenging on the thinking on your feet on the day type one, I'd say. We had some fun on the shoot as well, so there was a couple of funny... My funny thing... Gerald Buckfield is one of the funniest guys you'll meet. He's also, if you leave him alone for 7 seconds, he'll fall asleep. What was really... He had this weird sense of battery charging. If he's had a long day, he will sit down and just have a nap for 30 seconds and then get back up and go. Which I've found very... As somebody who struggles to sleep, I was very impressed by that. But you had to keep making sure that, like, Jez, are you ready? Huh? So he did an amazing job, Jez, because if you notice in the film, there's not actually a lot of ADR. It's actually, because most ADR, you know, when you record voice, record extra audio afterwards if the audio wasn't great on set. And most films you don't see that you don't know is actually usually around 80% of most films is actually ADR. But we don't have a lot of it because Jez did an amazing job. But it really cracked me up every time I said it. He wasn't doing it in the middle of his job, to be fair. He was doing it when there's a lot of sitting around on films. So say like me and Sean were setting up shots. He would literally just be resting his eyes for 30 seconds. And then it's like, are you ready? He'd be like, okay, let's go. And that cracked me up every time I saw it. So some shots that we had to kind of think of in terms of using our filmmaking skills rather than relying on visual effects. And even though there's lots of visual effects in this film, we had to do some practical type things. That's probably my favourite lo-fi film, was probably the key throw, which was essentially we needed to see the watcher throw keys from a great distance, but there's never in a million years is it going to land right in the spot where the camera's in focus, it's in frame. So it's literally, it looks like he throws it and sound effects adds to some, clinking as he kind of goes forward. But how we actually did it was the watcher just threw nothing. You give it a couple of seconds and then off screen we just dropped some keys and it just lands. But if you play it all together, I think that looks like a perfect throw of some keys. There's probably some fun outtakes of trying to do that, but the one shot was perfect, and I'm really proud of that shot. Sean Bishop's cinematography in this film is absolutely amazing. That cinematography which makes this film look like our budget was 10 times as much. What was most impressive about the cinematography to me is, in all honesty, lots of cameramen can just get a pretty shot. The difference is that when I prefer lots of long shots that are moving, which is very difficult for a camera operating director of photography who doesn't have a focus puller with them because of we haven't got the room. We're going to stick a focus puller. So a lot of which doesn't sound, it's not easy to move using a steady cam and things like that and focus it yourself at the same time. It's usually a 2 or 3 man job, and Sean did it fucking perfectly. So there might be one take or something to kind of just get the distance right, so the focus is always right. So I think when we look back at it, a lot of people will say how beautiful a lot of the images look. But me personally, I'll look at that shot where Sean followed Rory all around the house, and Rory is in perfect focus all the way around. The lighting that he's done to do that too, and to make sure that no lighting's actually in the shot as he's going out. I think to a non-filmmaker, you look at the beauty part, but to a filmmaker, that part was fucking well impressive, and I was really proud of Sean. So some of us had to put our expert acting chops in as well, where pretty much if you were part of the crew, you were in a part of the film too. I had an epic character with a long backstory of the farmer landlord who gives him some keys, walks in a van, very dramatic, and drives off. I also get, I'm sure I get, if at the end when you got lots of people shouting in the dark, close, what's it called? Open the door and light the way. I was one of the people shouting in the dark. I think I'm also a phone operator I'm sure there's something else. But we'll all agree that really it was my performances that really made the film.
Do you want to talk about your performance that was cut from the film, because you just weren't any good?
I also have one of the advantages of being a director and the editor is I can cut out rubbish actors. And in the film, there's 2 sleepwalkers. There's a female sleepwalker in a pink dressing gown as if she woke up and came from her house. There's also a sleepwalker in a high vis as if he was kind of possessed and kind of came from wherever he worked. And there was a third one who was supposed to be just in a hospital gown, walking to Longham, but he was rubbish, so I cut him out, but that was me. And this is the part where we insert the pain I went through, the footage of the pain I went through to do that epic scene where I was covered to death in these horse flies which are biting the shit out of me, and it's a tough life. I'm just saying. What I do is very hard. So our art director, Andrew Sexton, juggled a million jobs as well. So in pre-production, he did an amazing job helping produce this package of evidence that Billy had left Chris to show that there was, in fact, this apocalyptic cult out there. And he did all of the sketches. He did like renditions of what like crazy people would have drawn, or what's it called, when they described the origin that they all worshipped to Billy's character. Billy would have sketched it up. He also did a million, all those little madman writing again and again and again and again. He wrote all of those by hand. He did anything which you kind of see. All the photos that Keith, the production designer, took lots of photos of Andy's. He did lots of prosthetics, cuts and slices on skin, which look gross and really realistic. So he really helped us on the build-up of it. And then on set, he then, apart from helping on art direction, working with Keith, the production designer, he also was doing if there's any kind of prosthetics or gore or blood. That was Andy sorted all out. He was all the expert. The Watcher's look, which is kind of in and out of focus, but that really cool flayed face that the Watcher has towards the end, that was all Andy. And just to top it off, Andy also worked with the actors to help them do their makeup, their normal makeup and things like that. So he's a really amazing artist, and he was so much helpful and a big part of the quality of the film. In terms of the production value, huge part of that was Andy, and we're really proud of what he did.
He also made a cameo. He was a
And Andy also makes Andy is also another person who makes a cameo, because if you're on the crew, of course you did. He is, the creepy sleepwalker in the high vis shirt, the one that comes into the house. That's all Andy, bless him. And he did a really good job of that as well, to be fair, because that's actually really creepy. And then when he kind of gets done, you kind of feel sorry for him. That white eye to normalize, that's not a visual effect. He can do that. Filmmaking is filmmaking really, especially directing films, is just putting out fires. It's like everything that you planned is going to go wrong. So there's two main things that I'd say remembered from lessons learned are, first off is everything that you plan is going to go wrong. So what's your plan B? What your crew is not going to do is stand around and wait for you to make a decision. Even if what you think is like the wrong decision, just make a decision, and then your crew are good enough that they will make that wrong decision work. Hopefully I didn't make too many of them, but we did enough planning beforehand to really understand, if this happens, if it rains when we're trying to do this, okay, then we can film inside and do this. If this dialogue's not working, what can we do without the dialogue? I think the preparation, without that preparation going into it, if you think you can just turn up and wing it, you can't. And if you try that, you're going to do nothing but piss off your crew, because they're professionals waiting around for you to make a decision, thinking, no, why don't we try this? Schedules do not work that way. So you've got to prepare for whatever's going to go wrong. You can go wrong. And the second, I'd say always be open to the people's ideas. I like to hopefully think that as long as they give me one kind of like the way I would do it, give me other ways to do it. Like Rory, the actor, might say, could I try the performance a little bit this way? And be like, yeah, as long as we do one my way, let's do one yours. Sean, the cinematographer, he would be, I'd actually prefer it if we kind of filmed it more at this angle. I'm like, let's just get the one I was going to do for safety. Let's go for the one you want to do. And often you find that you'll be using the other person's suggestion in the actual final edit, because they're the expert at what they do. Directors at the end of the day are jack of all trades. They kind of average at everything, where the people coming in to do one job are specialists in it, so you should trust them. So it's always good to trust the people around you, and hiring the right people. That's what it's all about. You hire the wrong people, you hire moaners, you hire negative people, you're going to hate it yourself. Never mind working with them, it's going to be a process. And the last lesson I'd probably say is, your first edit, when you put it all down, is going to be shit. So the point is that you just plop down all your footage down. The first time you watch it, it's going to be slow, it's going to be too long. That everybody gets that. If you ask all the best directors, just Chris Nolan, Spielberg, they'll tell you the same thing. It's not just little old me. It's kind of like you expect that the first time you put it all together, you're going to be like, what is this nonsense? But you work on it, you keep going, you chop it down, you tighten it up, you get rid of scenes that don't work. There's a reason why you have an editor, or there's a reason why editing takes 6 months for big films rather than a couple of weeks, because in the storyboards I was going to do it like this. Half you do in the film. It's really true when they say the first set of writing is obviously the script. Your second rewrite is when you're shooting it, because the script isn't going to work, so you kind of got to write on the fly on this. And then your third rewrite is in the edit, because everything you shot, you kind of like doesn't kind of make sense as a sequence. So you need to understand that's going to happen, and don't be too disheartened when you're not fan. Usually when you actually put your footage together, you're like, wow, this is amazing. But when you actually put the film down, you're like, ugh. But you work on it, and you find that the more you work on it, the more what you wanted out of the film comes alive. And then it's a real important lesson to learn. And for any filmmakers, it's something to expect. So there's a lot of visual effects in the film done by Scott Bishop, our visual effects supervisor. There's always like these really cool, like the dream sequences are really cool, and so, there's this monolith float and everything like that. But I really love visual effects that you don't notice, like a couple of, for example, early in the scene, Chris throws his phone, and then we cut to a close-up of the phone all smashed. I bet most people have missed that smash is a visual effect, because that's my phone. We forgot to bring like a proper one, so we had to use mine, and I wasn't going to let him smash it. And I was a bit worried if it would work, but if you look at that shot, I think that smash is perfect. Scott's got a really good eye for turning something and doing it quickly as well, because we haven't got months and months and months to do it here. So little things like the big drone shot going into the cottage right at the beginning. You actually, in the first shot, there's actually a big driveway full of all the crew's cars. So Scott had to remove all them and add trees, and it's just a beautiful. I think the door was open on the house as well, so Scott had to, in visual effects, close the bloody door. So it's really cool to see little things that really people don't notice, but I think it's what gives production value to your film, because you assume they had all this and they had to locate. They didn't have to have their cars piled up on a drive. They can afford 1 million phones to smash. But apart from the amazing shots of the dream sequences and birds falling out the sky and all this, I really like the ones you just don't notice as visual effects, because that's really impressive. If you can get away with not noticing, that's really cool. And Scott did that a lot. There'll be a list of them that I actually won't mention, and see if you can spot them. Scott, as a visual effects supervisor, he did the job himself that it would take 10 visual effect artists usually to do. He did it quickly. He did it with the fact of every dickhead filmmaker like myself tends to do this thing of, we'll fix that in post, and then you realise that somebody has actually got to go and fix it without giving them any extra budget, without giving them any extra time. You're just kind of like, oh, we'll worry about that. It's not on the shoot, because you need to just move on with your day. Scott was the guy that had to sit there and go, how do I do this? And he found an answer to every problem that we did. So there's dozens of visual effects shots in the film. Half of them you wouldn't even notice were visual effects. Half of them are ones that you'd thought a team would have done, where instead most of it was pretty much just Scott getting on with it. And it's really impressive. The production value of the film just shot up. If you mix that with the cinematography, the performances, the visual effects is like the icing on the cake, so to speak, that really elevates the film, and the visuals on this film is really amazing. So when I first edited the film, I was never really, even with beautiful footage, even with some visual effects, some really cool music, it was only really, you'll notice your film only really comes together once you put real sound design on it. And Keith Lupton did an amazing job of, I would watch scenes and just explain to Keith and just be like, yeah, I'd like to hear this, 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 and this. And he'd just go away and then ask me to bring me in a couple of hours and just be like, is this what you wanted to see? And it'd be fucking perfect. And it'd be there's also, again, kind of similar with good visual effects that you don't notice, good sound effects that you assume was recorded by the microphone on the set. Keith has designed and set up and found the right sound effects and put them all together to have this bed of sound which elevates the film. If anything, you can forgive a film for having not the best footage or just not looking great, but if you've got bad sound, your film is in trouble. So the fact that when we look back at the film and listening to it in cinemas and on big speakers and listening to the real great sound mix that the guys at Sonic Fruit did, the sound design on it is incredible, and that elevates the film again. And if you ever get the chance to watch this on a big screen, to actually hear the sound and the rumble around you and the sound effects and the creepiness of it all, I really recommend it. There's actually, if you notice, there's a sense where there's a point where Rory, you feel like the madness has got to him. He sees something on the TV, he sees this woman on the television, and he's not sure if what he's seeing is real or if he's gone mad or if it's something supernatural. And then the watcher's outside and follows him, and he follows him off into these woods where he sees a sleepwalker. But Keith had this really good idea of having a strange sound underneath, which was like underneath water. So it kind of got. So if you find it sounded like, you know, when how all sound is kind of dulled and things when you actually put your head underwater. There's an aspect of that if you listen to it properly when they go into the woods. And I thought that was a really creative idea to try and just make this place feel strange. Because he had been in woods in other parts of the film. Apart from the fact that he followed this watch and he disappeared, there's this strange underwater, as if there's something not right about this place, there's something unnatural, and it just takes a scene which you maybe were feeling pretty flat about or might work until you have just that weird little part. You're like, oh, that works, that's great. Where it's something that I would have thought of, I don't think, and that was a really impressive bit of sound design by Keith. With Joe Buckfield's work, he was recording all the sound on Older Gods, and we thought he'd done a great job on all that. But we just hired him as a sound recordist. And the more as he's talking and we got to know Jez, we realised he was an absolutely amazing musician and producer. So you kind of like you assume that he's a sound guy. So, but then we started essentially testing the waters out of different composers and asking them if they could send us clips of music that they would put in this film. And none of it was really working. It was all either a bit too, generic horror or just rubbish. But then because we knew Joe, and so I'll give him a chance. And the music he sent over was absolutely spot on. It was quality. It was exactly what I was thinking. I would say that one of my worst parts of directing is explaining what I would like in music. I do find that quite tricky. I can explain what I want in a shot or what I want from a performance. And with music, you tend to find yourself going, I just want it creepy. I just want it, and it's not really. And if you put yourself in that, which to be fair to those other musicians, which maybe I didn't give the best brief to, Jez just got it. Helped that he knew what the film was about. And then I started asking him, okay, could you do an emotional theme? Maybe we'll just use one track that Jez does. Could you do an emotional theme? And then he did this amazing theme for when Chris, played by Rory, realises what happened to Billy when he's talking, and it's all rousing and it's a huge symphony sounding strings. It gets your heart pumping. And I was like, this soundtrack is amazing. And so by then it was kind of, we hammered down, Jez, you're doing everything. Any bit of music on here we took out, which is anything that we did or somebody else did. Jez did the whole thing. The soundtrack's going to be available to get, and it's amazing. There's a real great mix of creepy to existential and strange to emotional orchestra to organ stuff to it was all written, conducted, orchestrated by Joel Buckfield, and we're really proud of what he's done. And the annoying thing is he's not going to be available to us after these films because he's done such a good job, but I need to get some kind of contract which says he can only work with us. So I'll have a think about that. What viewers can expect from Older Gods as well is it's not your typical horror film, and I bet everybody says that, but this isn't the typical quiet jump horror film. Don't get me wrong, there's some fucking terrifying things that are going to make you jump, but all of the film is built around making you uncomfortable. So it's the creepiness from the sub-bass tones under the soundtrack, to the mystery, to the terror in Rory's eyes when he's acting, to the gory special effects. This is something that you don't see every day. It's exciting, but it's strange. It's horrifying, but it's emotional. It's something that you're not going to see. It's not your typical horror film or thriller. This film's going to blow your socks off.
Chris, thank you for following the breadcrumbs. I knew you'd be the one to find them. Now, listen to my voice. My breathing is steady. I sound fully conscious. I'm not what you all think I am. If you look through our findings, you'll see that we'd found sites, out-of-the-way places to perform there. depravities. We looked wherever there were reports of overindulgent murders, anything ritualistic. And we found lots of them. We realized we'd walked into their trap. They were tracking us.
Are you burdened with religion, Mr. Duffy? Do you know why he doesn't answer our prayers? He's scared, terrified, of waking something far older than him. He knows that by helping us, it would notice him. You see, your God is a coward. It answers me when I call. It listens. It tells me when it wakes, I will be rewarded for my devotion. And when it makes this world drown, I won't offer my hand to save any of you.